potential weak spot against a lot of the aggro decks that we're seeing in the Zoo and the Hunter, as well as the Demon Hunter that's obviously all but ubiquitous across the variety of lineups. The power of it, however, I think comes up against one of the other very popular classes in Rogue. The Druid feels like it's in a great spot to get down a wide board very early on that the Rogue will struggle to answer. And given that obviously Surrender does have that in addition to almost every player this weekend, I could definitely see this going either way, especially as Glory has just been one of the most consistently strong Druid players that we've seen in APAC.
Right. And so it kind of calls back to what we were talking about a while ago with Casey saying that Rogue will be the weak link in lineups this week. And so far, every series we've seen, and we're talking about these 4 decks, we're saying that the reason for bringing them is, well, they're kind of good against Rogue and there will be a lot of Rogue. So I think it's already coming to light what Casey was talking about, and we'll see if the builds of Rogue could have anything to say about it. So far, we haven't seen any Highlanders, and that still rings true. It's just the 2 ofs Rogue for both Surrender and Glory for this series as well.
And this just really makes me very happy that we have these very strong game plans that it feels like all the APAC players that we're seeing have realized. Because last year, it felt like some of the APAC players were playing catch-up. They didn't really have quite so strong of an idea of what their opponents will be bringing and how to counter that. This year, though, it feels like they're a lot more on the money this week with the lineups. They've got very similar to the other regions, very much keeping up in terms of what the best decks are now. And also with the 4th deck, I think there's a very good reasoning for every deck that's been brought here. There haven't just been some weird random deck thrown on at the end. It's a strong reasoning behind every thought process.
Right. And the fact that the Rogues aren't Highlander, I might add, would make it somewhat weaker against Druid because that deck had at least Zephyrus to fall back on as some type of AoE effect, even Waste Warden sometimes if they wanted to include it. But now it seems like it's exclusively Flick that can try and deal with Glowfly boards.
It is indeed. But speaking of Glowfly boards, let's take a look at the Druid deck from Glory to see what particular spice he's bringing this week, because he has been going back and forth a little bit on which cards he wants to include. It seems like they've pretty much decided as a practice group, him, Alutemu, and Possessi, that they don't want to include the Kael'thas in the list. They don't want to include Gift of the Wild, Gift of the Wild, or Forest Aid in the late game. And the real card they go back and forth on is Ysera. Not including it last week, but this week it's made an inclusion again.
Right, they do go back and forth, but that's not to say that it's just because they're indecisive. I think it's very deliberate that last week they did not have it because they expected an aggro meta full of Totem Shamans and Murloc Paladins, instead running, I think the one of Bees was decided on by the Japanese players. I think that was a very, very good and heads-up inclusion. But now that they know that the meta is back on Conquest, they're going to be seeing more of the games that go later into the end game. I think Ysera is making an appropriate comeback.
Agreed. It was looking very, very powerful. That 3 minion point feels to me like it's kind of about the right mark, where you have the power plays of the exotic Mount Sellers. But for most matchups, it's really just the power of the Glowfly Swarm that is able to get over the finish line, especially against Rogue. Like you were saying, Flick is pretty much the only answer outside of just dominating the board in the first few turns. And if there's one thing that Glory has shown last week in particular, it was very proficient play on this Druid. So I expect that to be, for him, not all too much of a weak spot. On the other side, though, for Surrender on the Zoo, which I think we might be getting to see in our first match here of the day, that one I think could be in a bit of a weird spot, because I am still left somewhat unconvinced on the Zoo, I've got to be honest, Gia.
Yeah, it seems that the builds have been changing from week to week, of course, partially affected by the format that the players were going through, but also affected by just people being unable to agree on what exactly is the best build right now. But if there's any card that is universally agreed upon to be good, it's Scrap Imp, and there's another, it's Magic Carpet.
Yeah, that's right. Are you thinking that they should be kept together? Because you could definitely argue that Magic Carpet kind of forms part of a different strategy where you just look for a bunch of 1-drops.
In this particular matchup against Demon Hunter, I think that you actually need both of them to swing back into the board. You already see Surrender shaking his head as early as now. We did play a bunch of this matchup last night, and I was consistently losing as Zoo because Demon Hunter just has such efficient ways to deal with 1-drops that you can't reliably stick them and just hope that can clear their boards. Any weapon, Twin Slice, and a lot of the battle cry effects will easily let Demon Hunter clear that up.
Well, Gio, I think it's fair to say that Glory is he's no Derek Brown. Surrender may be with a bit of a better shot here.
But he has got a bunch of 1-drops early on.
Ah, that's a good start. You're halfway there.
And here's a play that we were talking about last night, which is just playing the Expired Merchant on 2 to discard a carpet and get extra carpets. I think it was worth thinking about here, but Surrender knows that he's got the Scrap Imp coming online soon, so I also like just getting as many 1-drops as possible.
I agree,
Will he have the
because
time?
it feels to me like Glory probably would have just ignored the Expired Merchant, and then you have way less cards to buff with the Scrap Imp, 2 less overall than if you just tapped. And therefore, I really like going with the tap route. It allows him for a strong play onto the board in the next couple of turns to try and swing things back, even though it's not looking easy by any stretch of the imagination.
I already see 2 lines of play for Surrender here. He could start clearing as early as now with the Stone Tusk, or he could even take a VT by using the Beaming Sidekick and develop the Argent Squire. Very strong swing, but it kind of strands the carpet. Not really strands, it can be played, but not for immediate guaranteed value next turn unless you top decks a 1-drop. The other play is to just play a carpet here, and even if that doesn't stick, you can play the other. But I like this a lot better. It's faster, it makes Glory have to respond as early as now, and he's got a strong chance of top decking a 1-drop at some point anyway.
I totally agree, Gia. Even with a slight deviation on the game plan here, the same heart of the play is in place. And also because the other thing you have to consider is if you play Magic Carpet there, it very possibly just dies. And then on the next turn, you're only playing Magic Carpet plus 1-1-drop. It's just way too slow, all things considered. You've got to start swinging back right now, which is exactly what Surrender has done. And for Glory, he's got strong follow-ups, to be fair. But he needs to be wondering about whether it's worth trading with all of these cards at all, or if he just starts launching things to the face.
Right. I think that because he's drawn the other Frozen Shadow Weaver, that might be a reason to start going face, but it seems too good to let go of the value from the Satyr Overseer. He's going for wide development instead, but this is Surrender's chance to clear everything and just make sure he never falls behind on board anymore.
Very smart here. This is the best of both worlds. Allows him to clear off the Divine Shield, so no value, strong value trades with the Divine Shield can come down, but still gets the damage face. However, it seems like Surrender's got a powerful card there, Agia.
Yes, 1-drop with Taunt, something that he can immediately rush with the Magic Carpet. Makes his turn very clean, but there's a lot to be decided here on how he wants to distribute the trades, because he could take a bunch of value trades, for example, the 3/5 Imp into the Satyr Overseer, instead of, say, trading off his Argent Squire. But that's very weak against something like Altruist.
My instinct is to say that you shouldn't actually play around Altruist that heavily, because if they have Altruist at any point, it's probably going to wipe your board. You could definitely argue that on turn 5, giving them a bunch of 1-health minions is a little bit too easy for them to get good value off of it.
I think that with the amount of Glorious cards in hand, very small, I think that it's fine to leave up a couple of 1-health minions and just develop the most damage that Surrender can. I would like to see the value trades here. You see him taking a long time to think about it, rightfully so.
Yeah. Because in order for it to clear more than the 1-health minions, it would have to be exactly Altruist plus Twin Slice. And you could definitely make the argument that if Twin Slice had been in hand, it would have already come down.
Like it a lot. And Glory forced to respond a little bit here. He's thinking about whether this can get there if he sends this. It looks like the next turn for Glory is gonna be a Glaive Bomb. Unless it's Twin Slice, the skull gets stuck in hand and can't be used for outcast value. So I actually think Glory should be trading here.
I think I agree. It's so close, Gia. It's so close.
The way the hand is looking, just the Glaive Bound doesn't get there for Glory. So he will, at some point, probably have to play the Skull.
Yeah.
And so that favors going for the late game, but Glory says no. We are wrong. We'll see how that pans out. Carpet Shield Bearer available.
The fact, of course, that he couldn't swing with the weapon again on that turn does disincentivize you somewhat from trading, because you could make the argument that Surrender would have to trade into the 2-1 anyway, and he can't take any value trades. So, just going back to Hearthstone fundamentals, if your opponent can't value trade you, it's reasonable to just go face. Obviously, things get more complicated when you factor in the carpet, though.
For Surrender, I mean, the Shield Bearer, of course, can be rushed now, all the way up to 2 attack with both carpets coming down. But maybe Surrender would want to save it for a turn where the taunt is more impactful. Say, when all the minions are cleared, and then it will soak up a weapon damage. Possibly. But I think it's still perfectly reasonable here. It's gonna end up on 3 health anyway. And Zoo playing... Oh, he's going... Surrender's just playing with me here. I can't tell what he ends up deciding on.
Yeah, well, if he had gone for the Mount Siller, he should have gone for the one on the left, which is the buffed up one.
Right.
Definitely.
Oh, Metamorphosis!
That's a very big draw.
Yeah,
that means we could see Metamorphosis face, next turn, face again, swing with the weapon, and Glaive Bound Adept. There's lethal set up here for Glory.
Glory, with a huge sigh of relief, already feels like he's won. And you know what? I think he's right. There's no way Zoo can come up with all the burst damage needed this turn immediately. Also, no way for them to heal. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be a Lackey off of Evil Genius, which I don't even think is in the deck.
The best way I could have seen is if Surrender could have somehow buffed his Shield Bearer so that Glory wouldn't be able to attack into it and do that, but there's no way.
Sure.
Yeah. That was the perfect top deck for Glory.
And fair play to Glory. If he had gone for the trade with the Crimson Sigil Bearer, he would not have found lethal on these last couple of turns. It's these smallest of differences that really can make all the difference when it comes to the series overall, and that does mean that Glory is just able to creep over the finish line and take the win versus the Zoo.
You know what? I think that these players are being more reactive and emotive than ever before, even in Division A, where things are relatively safe. Odds for getting the bracket. You can see how much it means to them now that we're on to week 4 and the final results are closer than ever.
That's right, and you got to remember, it's not like last year where there was 7 weeks of round robin where you were playing a whole bunch of matches, and in the first couple of weeks you could realistically just go, it's not the end of the world. If I lose 1 or 2 matches here, I can still pull it back. With only 4 weeks of round robin, every single win is absolutely crucial, which is why Chonsu in the previous series is going to have to be feeling awful. Surrender is going to be feeling a little bit scared as he goes into the rest of the series. 0-1 down up against Glory. The 2 best players through the Swiss of Asia Pacific will continue their series after this. In our first moment, newcomer Kin0531 shows great restraint by holding back on a very tempting Arcane Breath on turn 1 in order to answer a totem on turn 2. Through this very disciplined line, he beautifully plays around Totemic Reflection and takes a well-deserved win. Very reserved gameplay. You could not have paid me to not kill that Blazing Battle Mage there, and then I would have probably lost the game. So well played there by Kin. Turn 3 sounds like the perfect turn for a Primordial Explorer, right? Wrong. By playing the Fairy Dragon off curve, Monsanto leaves Purple stranded with a hand full of unusable removal.
Would be off curve, but turn 3 is when Druid would want to remove a minion.
You'd love to see it, TJ. This is some good Hearthstone being played right now.
This is some solid Hearthstone.
This is great.
Here we see Flurry cleverly utilizing Conjurer's Calling on Alutemu's remaining taunt minion for a very likely lethal. However, at the last moment, Winged Guardian swoops in to Alutemu's rescue.
And just a conj on this will close it out. Most of the time, I heard a taunt generate though. Winged Guardian! Oh no! Got another conj.
Oh my god, he can't target it with the other Conjurer's Calling. It's lethal.
Oh my god!
Oh my god, you've got to feel for Flurry here. That was just absolutely brutal. Despite having a PhD, at a first glance it looks like Dr. Bunnyhopper can't count to 4 when he trades away his 4-attack Twilight Drake instead of the Bone Wraith. The genius becomes clear, however, when we see Bosden forced to trade his on-curve King Crush into the Taunt. And yes, Subtle, I'm always watching.
He has Alexstrasza, which means as long as he can deal with the King Crush, he can recover. And look at this play. This is winning Bunnyhopper the game right now, and it is such a weird play. And then have access to that Zephyrs to just end the game. Can't quite set that up in a clean way, and there's Bone Raid. Give that guy a medal.
Derek Brown, are you watching? Top 5 plays right there.
Moving over to the Americas, we see Muzzy playing Highlander Paladin in a very unconventional way. After seeing Monsanto discard the exotic Mount Seller and getting the upgraded Paladin hero power from Sir Finley of the Sands, Muzzy transitions seamlessly to a fatigue plan. Due to Monsanto's lists running few threats, Muzzy is able to completely exhaust his entire game plan. Well played.
That's good. Yeah, Muzzy can't lose here at this point. Monsanto concedes. What a crazy game number 1.
The grudge match of the century resumes here in Asia Pacific Grandmasters. It's Glory and Surrender, and Glory is 1-0 up at the moment, which, interestingly enough, marks the first game that Glory has taken off of Surrender so far in this year of Hearthstone Grandmasters. Despite the fact they've faced off against each other 3 times, Glory has been 3-0 swept every single series. So he's already breaking into new territory here, Gia, with his win on the Demon Hunter. And it does, of course, mean now he's left with the Druid and the Rogue on his side left.
Right. Gotta feel good for Glory, not only taking his first win against Surrender, but after he also dethroned Surrender unexpectedly in Swiss points. I think Surrender, watch out for Glory on all ends. And also, you brought up a really good point about the games being very important, not just for pride points, but because we're working in this round robin with just a few weeks on the line. Every single game matters, not just the series, for tiebreakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is so close. You have to be paying attention to every single match, always queuing up your best decks, even if you're 2-1 or 2-0 up remaining, which Glory could be here with his 2 remaining decks. As I said, the Rogue and the Druid. I would have to say that I feel like neither is going to be particularly struggling in the rest of this series. Obviously, Rogue arguably has a weak spot against the Demon Hunter, which, as if by magic, we're going to be seeing here. But I feel like it's got a decent matchup up against the Zoo and obviously in the Mirror. And it's got to be said, it's not the worst matchup in the world.
Right. In one of the weeks, I can't quite remember which, it actually showed in our stats that Rogue had an over 50% win rate with Demon Hunter. Of course, the builds were a little bit different then, and I think that was Galakron Rogue, but definitely the Rogue has the tricks and tools in its arsenal to be able to take back the early game. Namely, Backstab is the big one. But sometimes they do just get clunky hands like this from Glory.
If I had to guess, I would say that over time that would shift in Demon Hunter's favor, because, to be fair, this Galakron Rogue, while it does have the secret package, as we can see here with Shadow Jeweler Hanar coming down, it's basically the same deck that we've seen for quite a long time now with Galakron Rogue. Not all too much has changed. Whereas Demon Hunter, despite a lot of games being played of it, it's a very new deck and a new class, obviously, overall. So I think as players learn the matchup that little bit more, learn exactly how to exploit Rogue, with their lack of healing, then I think it will shift slightly in Demon Hunter's favor, if I had to hazard it.
I gotta say that even though I called this hand Key from Glory, he does have Hanar into Secret, and I just kind of thought, well, Demon Hunter will be able to clear that, right? If they stuck a Battle Mage at the beginning, they've got Twin Slice, Chaos Strike, a bunch of things, but it turns out with Surrender's hand, even with the coin hero power, he would not have been able to clear the Hanar, and that's a big deal. It gives Glory something to do in these early turns.
However, the Miscreant off the top presents a very difficult decision now to Glory.
Right.
He could go for the Noble Sacrifice to discover another secret, but of course Hanar always offers you 3 secrets from the class of the secret you didn't play. So if you play a Paladin secret here, it will only offer you Hunter, Rogue, and Mage, which means you're not going to get another 1 cost. So he holds back on it here in order to activate the Miscreant next turn. And I think this is very, very smart play.
Yep. Well spotted. And also, I think, gives Surrender a lot of knowledge that it's probably going to be Miscreant next turn. Otherwise, he would almost always just take the value. But Surrender is still not sure what secret this is just yet. He's ruled out Ambush, but Bamboozle is going to be pretty scary.
I mean, it's not like he can make the read that it is Bamboozle, because I think if Glory had any secret there, he would just play it out. And it's more likely, statistically, to be the Dirty Tricks, because there's 2 of them in the deck.
Right. So Surrender is going to be, I think, debating attacking with his minion to try and save health to his face. Or he's praying. It's a pretty good result.
That's pretty good.
That's insane. The dagger becomes...
Whoa!
What? Rightful Smith. This is an arena card, but when it's enraged, I think it gives your weapon +2 attack.
It does. I haven't seen this card since like 2016 Arena. This is old school.
Oh my gosh, that's
But it's
crazy.
nuts! This is so good.
He's got an auto deadly poison. Draws another secret to fill out his curve. And he can just take back the board here. Insane.
He can indeed. However, Surrender is not left without a few tricks of his own. Coin Warglaives, that's the play I'm looking at here. Get that, get the Spiteful Smith off the board, keep the damage going to face. He knows it's not another Bamboozle, because there's only 1 in the deck, so he is safe to just get the damage to the dome here.
It's also a benefit to Surrender that in case it is Ambush, and it is, he doesn't even play a minion this turn to proc it.
Good point.
He can play it next turn, and then kill it off with the Warglaives.
Oh, gorgeous.
And I think it's for that reason that Surrender is thinking about holding on to this extra charge. I'd like to see it be held.
I think I would too. It's obviously the ambush, and it's also just the double Chaos Strike that really ramps up your damage. That is a potential 7 damage sweep on the board that can also go face for a lot of damage.
Seems good. Glory gonna start off by rocking his Miscreant. He set up for this on turn 4, but I think deviated rightly so.
I think I prefer the Draconic Lackey on this turn. I feel like the Miscreant here, even though that's obviously a pretty unlucky outcome to get on 4 mana, it's just so likely to die to the Warglaives on the following turn. Whereas if you were able to get Corruptor plus a value trade on the following turn, then maybe you're able to upgrade it to something a little bit more impressive.
I think that I like the Witchy here because Glory probably can't reliably this turn, even with Ambush and Noble Sacrifice active, just because it's Demon Hunter with Warglaives active. So in that case, he really wants to play Lackey plus Faceless onto that Lackey. And so he wouldn't have gotten the Witchy Battle Cry unless he played it this turn.
Well, doesn't work out great for him, even if it was overall the correct play. Not the way results-oriented, how dare you. But it does still, again, just work out pretty well for Surrender, clearing off most of the board, getting the damage to face, tick, tick.
So this will proc the Ambush now, and Surrender can just clean up nice and easy if he wants.
Oh, he can even get the last hit to face, and then with the 1 damage left over from the hero power, he would then be able to clear off the 1/1.
He can't attack again if he goes face, right?
Oh, it's after you kill a
your
minion. Oh,
attacks
yes,
minion.
sorry, yes. I was trying to get too creative there and go for it the other way around.
But there you go, Draconic Lackey int. Evasive is pretty.
Yep, I like the look of that a
Not
lot.
not that he'd probably want to play it over Galakron on 7, but just a taunt that's hard for Demon Hunter to target. Could be useful.
That's a top deck.
Off the top. You can do the play that you wanted now.
This
Twin
is
slice
insane.
into the 4/4,
Yep.
the other attack into the 4/1.
The
It's insane.
absolute dream.
But he's going down to 8 if he does that. That's pretty
true.
scary.
That's true. The rogue all of a sudden just turns into the aggressor.
Render's face tanked so much damage, given up his health to clear the board, and honestly, no small part of that was the early and unexpected Spiteful Smith. But now Glory, does he just say Galakron and go? Because he's got Kronks for burst on the next turn if he wants it.
Yeah, it just doesn't quite get there though, does it? I think you want to try and get down some kind of minion pressure, then follow up with the Kronks thereafter.
Particularly Evasive Draconid, so annoying for Surrender because
Oh my god.
he can't face tank it, then or else he goes down to 1, and he can't target it with anything else. So he's got to buff minions, and I don't know how that's possible. So is it look for Ultruous and Prey? Are we on that level now?
It's probably the best bet he's got. This was a very nice pick and a nice play from Glory, because the only hand, straight up damage that Demon Hunter has is I-Beam, which just does not work.
Surrender could, from his perspective, face tank this after he heals with I-Beam onto his own minion.
Yikes.
And Glory, having not set up any other minions, makes that super awkward for Surrender.
The worst thing of all is that Surrender can't even attack face and then hit a Glaive-bound Adept to take it out, because he would have to tank into the 7/7
Right?
first to be able to hit it. Glory, with this single minion, has all avenues covered.
Mega awkward, but I think Surrender has recognized that he needs to bite the bullet here. It's very low odds that he draws exactly Ultruous and has enough mana to even play it to clear the Evasive here. So for Glory, not a fully invoked Galakron, so it's not lethal just yet. But he could get there over 2 turns with the Kronks.
Yeah, now it's time.
Darken the skies.
Oh, poor
Surrender. It's almost scarier to see a 1-card Galakron than a 2-card Galakron here, because you just know exactly what they're setting up with this very weak turn here. It has to be the Kronks the turn
Don't
off.
let the door hit you.
Could this be a runner Ultruous? Surrender's got an outcastable Spectral Sights.
Well, that's the out. That's what he has to hit to have any chance at all of this.
The other I-Beam could also keep him alive against 1 Kronks and nothing else.
Well, there's not enough mana for 2 Kronkses as well, so if the
Sorry,
I-Beam
I mean,
can
like-
be found here.
Right. By nothing else I meant, say, an Eviscerate or
Sure.
Damage Lackey.
Sorry.
But yeah, it's gotta be draw, I think.
I see.
They will never catch me.
Okay.
Still get the other I-Beam? Okay, so he attacks with the 1/1, kills it off just to stay alive, I suppose. Is he thinking about maybe not using it? Because of course he doesn't know that Glory has the Kronks.
You've
Maybe
got
Surrender
it,
says,
right.
yeah, I feel like he does, but he's thinking about it. Glory feels like he's won, but it's not over yet. 7 health. Got 1 roll of a lackey. That also fits with Kronks if he wants it.
Could he just go Kronks for 5 damage to face and then step it on this turn and hope to survive for lethal next turn?
Oh.
It would have to be 5 damage from hand, which is just a Glaive-bound Adept, and that's lethal. Ah, it's too scary, isn't it? It's too scary.
Yeah, and there's an Ultruous. I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah,
it
yeah.
works. I think he's got to do the AoE. Yup. Surrender again has outs. Gotta be more draw, I think. and a Twin Slice, maybe there isn't a one card out.
Yeah, I think it would involve like Chaos Strike into Twin Slice, but he's already played both Chaos Strikes.
Mm-hmm.
Can
freeze.
freeze. Yeah.
This, but there is the Shadow Step that can lock up this game, given that the other 2 minions can attack. Unless he does exactly freeze the Kronks, attack the face, and Glavebound a 1/1.
Yes, that is the way he survives the turn, Gia.
But
Doesn't do much else, but it keeps him alive.
And you know what? I think that's actually just the wrong play. Unless Surrender does it, then it might be right. Being very results-oriented to say that this is the play that keeps you alive, but far and away, I don't think you should be playing around exactly Shadow Step to keep you alive this turn and possibly not give you the chance to win next turn.
You're probably right.
The Surrender is making, in my opinion, the right play, but it happens to be the play that loses him the game.
It does. I think, yeah. Still the correct play overall gives him some chance of swinging it back on the following turn. But Glory, 1 to the face with the Patient Assassin was all he needed. And of course, the Shadow Step to close things out. That was a terrifyingly close game there for Surrender. With the I-Beam off the top, I thought that he had been able to swing things back. But well played by Gloria.
Glory's something of a Patient Assassin himself, taking 0-3 sweeps against Surrender in the beginning, only to potentially sweep Surrender back here in the round robin after Glory finished as the King of Swiss. What a story that would be.
Yeah, it's been a very, very cool story already, seeing Glory and Surrender bump up against each other and trying to become the king of Asia Pacific here. But now with only 1 game left, it is going to be that weird but crucial deck for Glory now on the Druid. This has been the best friend of the Japanese players for every single week so far. I think all 3 of them have brought it every week. Obviously, the 3rd week doesn't really count because they had to bring it in the 10-class format, but they were still relying on it very heavily, it felt like. And now it is going to be the final hurdle for Glory to take the win. And I think overall for Surrender, it's looking decent overall, but what are the matchups looking like overall? Which is the one he's most likely to win with?
I would say the Demon Hunter seems like a very strong queue against Druid, just for the reasons that they get on board so quickly before Druid even tends to develop their own minions, and maybe Druid only reliably draws 2 or 3 pieces of removal, which by that point, if they're playing from behind, Demon Hunter can just close it out with Burst. I can also see some merit for Zoo, for not exactly the same reasons, because I feel like that's one of the matchups where Zoo is not playing everything onto the board immediately. They want to do the Scrap Imp, and then they can even fight for value against the Glowfly board, given that they had an early Imp. So both of those strong options. It's really just the Rogue for Surrender that I feel might be struggling a bit. And this is Conquest, so if Surrender wants to win the series, he will have to run up the Rogue against Druid eventually.
He will. However, I think, like you said, with the fact that the game score matters in terms of tiebreakers, he'll probably be lining up the Rogue last, unless he's seeing something secret that we are not quite privy to in terms of the matchup against the Druid. Because I agree, the Demon Hunter definitely feels like the best first queue to try and take the win with against the Druid, especially given that, Glory has pivoted back to a somewhat more late game version of the Druid deck. He's cut a Wrath, which is a very key piece of removal early on against the Demon Hunter, and with Ysera and Wild Growth, it's a little bit more late game oriented. So I think that's probably the best bet.
Brother.
And here we go. The exact matchup we were expecting. Druid on coin, so able to answer a 1-drop if they want to. But I think, as well as the other Japanese players, have shown time and again that they're not playing for the removal cards in the mulligan, even if they're the defender in the earlier turns. They're playing to get to their real game plan, which is Fungal Fortunes, Overgrowth, get your Glowfly, get your exotic Mount Seller.
What about the Demon Hunter, though? Are you liking the Satyr Overseer just as a play that could come down in the relative early game?
It's tough to say. I would say it could be kept if he had something else to shore up the early turns.
Like that?
It's a bold keep from Surrender. Pays off for him. Gotta say, I would have caved and thrown it there just to make sure I got a 1-drop, but Surrender will be rewarded here.
It is one of those cards that despite the fact it appears relatively weak at a first glance, if it's left unanswered, you can just run away with the game against Druid.
Yeah, that does a Glowfly Swarm board on its own.
Yeah, exactly. Why would you spend 5 mana on that?
Like, we've seen this start from Druid over and over again. Glory with both in hand, almost guaranteed not to discard anything. There's the Glowfly. He's got Coin Innervate Glowfly next turn.
Yeah, it's looking very powerful indeed for Glory. He's got options as well. It could be the Glowfly next turn. Could also be the Wild Growth to curve into Glowfly 1 turn later,
Right.
which allows him for a sooner exotic Mount Seller. Kind of a tough call, actually, I think.
Yeah, that also is, I guess, supported by the fact that he has 2 minions to begin with, so he would only get 5 Glowflies, I believe, if he goes Coin Innervated. But honestly, it seems too scary to wait another turn, because that's at least another 8 coming to his face, and if he spends the turn just Glowfly next turn, it's another 8, and by then, Demon Hunter might have just gotten the remaining 8 for the 24 just from their hand.
Problem is, though, it only gives you 5 5/5s, which, you know, is not bad. Don't get me wrong.
5 5/5s would be insane.
5 2/2s,
there.
sorry, yes. 5 2/2s. I would gladly take 5 5/5s. Which is not even that much further ahead than the Demon Hunter is right here.
Right. Render, freeze 1, and then
Yeah.
Hero Power second slice to deal with another. It's a question of whether he wants to trade both of these 2/2s as well.
I'm going to say yes. I think here for Surrender, he needs to take it a little bit further into the late game, and just giving them a good Power of the Wild into 2 value trades
Right.
is too much for me from Surrender's side. The 4/2, I think you can get away with going face for sure.
Mhm. There's an argument that because he has Warglaves, then he can take the damage because the Warglaves can clean up everything anyway.
True, yep.
But I think that is probably wasting 2 charges, so I also like the trade here.
Well, the game plan definitely slows down, to say the least, now for Glory. It looks like we're gearing up with 2 Ironbarks and a Bog Beam in hand. One of the Mount Sellers on 7 mana is far and away his best opportunity. It's just about surviving until then. Which means
I wonder.
he could actually get away with not playing the Wild Growth on this turn, and instead utilize his mana quite a bit more effectively, actually, with Rising Winds this turn and then Wild Growth thereafter.
Yeah, I like this a lot. Using both the Rising Winds for minions, there's so many combinations of what he could have done. I was even looking at Ironbark to get him some value trades, but of course, that gets you less benefit off of the Mount Seller. I think Glory found the happy middle ground here where he's able to use all of his mana, not really waste any of the cards that gets cheaper, and clear the Satyr Overseer.
Well, the downside of the Eagles is, of course, the Warglaze, which can easily just cut them out the sky and allow the rest to go face.
That paints a very, very dramatic image in my mind. Just Illidan with the Warglaves. Did you see that GIF that Blizzard sent a bunch of the streamers and people in the community? Just imagine somebody cutting down eagles with those.
Well, with the sunglasses on, the windbreaker, flipping around in the air.
Amazing. All right. Wild Growth this turn will make the Bog Beam active already, so Glory can just shoot away the 4/3. One last
Overgrowth
minion.
would.
Oh
Wild
yeah,
Growth
sorry.
would.
Overgrowth would. My bad.
Which is an interesting talking point in its own
yeah.
right.
I was really looking at it because he's at 14. I
Yeah.
think that -1 Mount Seller to save 4 health might be worth it here. Too late because Surrender's just got the lethal.
He's got lethal!
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the Glaive Bound was exact lethal off the top.
I mean, we bring it up as like a minor talking point, as an improvement point he could have made on that turn, which was already looking very powerful. But for Glory there, he should have calculated, right? The Glaive Bound, it's not an out there chance of dying. It's a very obvious play on that turn. And he kind of just gave it up to a 1-card combo from Surrender, whereas he could have played around it.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly was just looking at the Bog Beam because it seemed convenient on that turn. I wasn't even counting up the lethal, but That
Yeah.
was very, very cleanly spotted by Surrender. And maybe Glory could have taken a little bit more time there, maybe saying, well, if I want to win the game, I need to get as many minions off of the Mount Seller as possible. But I would also agree that he should have taken more time to think about it.
I'm not saying maybe. That was just a misplay. He just didn't think of Glavebound Elemental there. His game plan was too set from early on the wild growth, which is, I can understand where his thought process is. I'm not trying to rag on him too hard here, but he should have taken a second to think about that, because a one-card combo from your opponent that you can afford to play around, you just should. It's not that difficult.
One card combo.
Yeah, exactly. That's Demon Hunter's specialty.
Yeah. They're so strong that even one card counts as a combo for them.
Pretty
I love
much.
it.
Be mine.
But that does mean Surrender's on the board now with a little bit of momentum going into another favorable matchup, Zoo versus Druid. I don't think any of these cards really get there for Zoo.
Yeah. This just speaks to me so much about about Glory as a player, Gia. He's so good at the game, and I feel like he understands the matchup so well in terms of looking for your own game plan primarily in the matchup. You don't want to be too reactive. You want to move towards your own win condition. But it's when these high-pressure situations arrive that there's that tiny little bit of polish at the end that is lacking that can make all the difference.
I would agree. A lot of potential in there, but always room for a bit of improvement. And I think in the earlier games, we could see that Glory was very, very excitable. Whenever he got lethal or he felt like he won, you could see it on his face. And there were moments where Surrender actually played around the winning game, lost that turn, and Glory ended up winning. And I also think it should be prudent to just maybe temper your expectations a little bit.
Power of the Wild, I think, has to come down as just a minion. Not necessarily this turn, but I think it just should do. Because, you're setting up for Glowfly buff on turn 6. That just seems way too late game oriented. I think I want here for Glory. Just try and fight back on the board in these turns.
Right. Both of them have drawn very lackluster hands. They have pieces of what they want to do. For example, Surrender has the Merchant and Nightshade Matron. If he had Hand of Gul'dan, that would be insane. But he's not got even the Scrap Imp to try and buff the one-cost minions in his hand.
Kind of punished as well, actually, there for not attacking in with his hero power on the previous turn. Because now all of a sudden he's left with a 1-2 on the other side instead of a 1-1, so he can't kill it unless he expends the Moonfire.
Mm-hmm. Look at this now. With the top deck of Hand of Gul'dan, Surrender can play either the Matron or the Expired Merchant. I think the Merchant would not make him overdraw, given that he can also play a 1-drop. But there's also some benefit to just having a 5 board now and pressuring Glory a bit more.
Seems pretty nuts, right?
It's still good.
Oh, he rips the Scrap Imp. I think that's exactly the reason for playing the Merchant over the Matron. If you get Scrap Imp and it can be played immediately, that can make all the difference.
Fair enough. That is definitely what you're looking to do traditionally against Druid, is get these big minions all at the same time, which is what Surrender is moving towards very rapidly.
Unfortunately for him, there's no way to actually kill off his Merchant and then use Matron to rediscard. I'm getting a bit greedy here. I'm just wondering if it's worth playing one of these minions to develop right now, given that it's cards out of hand and mana spent, but less minions buffed by the Scrap Imp.
I think as long as Surrender is able to answer a Glowfly relatively well next turn, he should hold back as much as possible. Because, like you said, the Scrap Imp is just what you're trying to move towards every single time. It just allows you to explode onto the board, and the Druid has no one-turn answer.
You bring up the Glowfly. Very good point. That's why I'm looking at this carpet being preemptively developed onto the board. I don't think you need the buff on the carpet so much as its ability to rush a bunch of things And if he spends the mana now, he can play all of his 1-drops next turn. Surrender is looking at Matron instead, which will guarantee discard the other Matron. And he can still go Carpet next turn.
Yeah, this does mean that he's left with a Hand of Gul'dan potentially coming into the hand once the expired Merchant dies, and the only way to get rid of it is then Soulfire, which is obviously not guaranteed at all. You're going to have to rely on a pretty lucky outcome there.
It can be
But it does put the most
guaranteed.
pressure on the board as possible.
It can be close to guaranteed because Surrender's going to empty his hand of 1-drops pretty soon.
True.
So the Squire and the Beaming Sidekick make for many clean value trades here.
He's just ticked all the boxes here. He's left himself with a hand full of buffed minions, and at the same time, answered the Glowfly.
I think we can see here Surrender is thinking about buffing the expired Merchant to take yet another value trade, but maybe he wants to kill it off while he can, just to make sure that the hands are already available for next turn.
That's fair. Although with the amount of damage he'll have on board, I think if Glory doesn't play anything, like a Innovate into Exotic Mount Seller or another Glowfly, Surrender's just winning by so much, he doesn't really need to worry about that.
It's fair. Okay, looks like he's gonna go for Voidwalker instead. This signals to me that he will kill off the Merchant this turn, I think. Very disciplined trades from Surrender here. And the pop-off for Glory isn't much of a pop-off at all. You can Innervate, Mount Seller, and only play Moonfire. None of the zero-cost other cards available.
I think I'm liking the look of Glowfly Innovate Power the Wild. It allows him to take out the both Voidwalkers on the board. Obviously the Carpet is still knocking about, but outside of that, the argument is definitely there that you could just go for Glowfly and then save the Innovate for next turn with the Mount Seller. But he needs to either do something powerful this turn or set up for something very powerful next turn. And to be honest, I'm not sure which is better right here. They both have their big upsides and downsides.
So your play removes 5 damage from the board, which is very significant, I would say, because Surrender is already showing so much. If he removes the 5, I think that allows Glory to possibly survive an extra turn. It's not guaranteed, of course, because Surrender could develop more things.
He's taken the immediate payoff at the downside of a weaker play next turn with the Exotic Mount Seller.
I think I like this as well. I think the alternative was just something like Glowfly and Crystal Power.
Yep.
And that seemed a bit too slow, but now Surrender can play 3 1-drops, Soulfire, and if it discards anything but the other Soulfire, be in a very happy situation.
Very happy indeed.
So he can put himself at 67% chance to discard Hand of Gul'dan. That's pretty good. But the 33% is, I wouldn't even say disastrous, because he's quite far ahead on board.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Alright, the expected outcome. And now, again, disciplined trades we're seeing from Surrender, locking up the board. He knows that if he just keeps this up, he's going to be so far ahead on board. And Glory likely, unless he has a very specific hand, just won't be able to pop off with the Mount Seller quickly enough.
I think Surrender was very close to lethal this turn with both Soulfire to face.
Oh, really?
If everything had gone face. I think it might have been one off, but just worth noting.
Again, your aggro roots shine through, Gia.
Always gotta look for it. Well, no amount of Griffins available this turn can get Glory out of this one. The Overflow wouldn't heal him out of range as far as I can see. There's 15, 20, 21 showing for Surrender, so...
Well, in that case, if he can go Overflow, Moonfire, and double Bog Beam, then he can stay alive. There are draws to keep Glory in the game, but then, of course, that detracts from the power of his Mount Seller on the following turn.
Wait, he just didn't play a bog. Okay. I guess he is going for the big swing. Knows that a Soulfire has been played and he doesn't really expect the second one. But again, I feel maybe he could have expended the bog beam earlier.
Could have got away with one. That one I think is a little bit closer. It is a one-card combo that his opponent has to have. But if he did go for it, the alternative was very, very weak there. It would have been only a 2-card Mount Seller there instead of a 3-card Mount Seller. And if he had been able to pull that back, maybe if he had got, like you said, 3 diving Griffins off of the Mount Seller, that would have been what he needed to take the win up against Surrender. But now the Zoo has taken the win. The Demon Hunter has taken the win. The two, in our opinion, favorable decks up against the Druid have got the job done after a very well-played couple of games by Surrender. That Zoo in particular, I think, was very, very smart. But now it's just the weak point of the Rogue left.
Before we move on, I want to say I'm very annoyed at your phrase one-card combo. How can it be a combo if it's one card, Derek?
You're coming back to that now?
No, you said it a while ago again. For the other Soulfire, I think you said something about worrying about a one-card combo.
Yeah, well, okay, a one-card lethal, I suppose, is the thing that would make sense if you're speaking English. Yeah. I don't worry about that kind of stuff. It's not like it's my job or anything.
It's not like that's the country where you were born or anything. But we do have Game 5 now between Glory and Surrender. Surrender coming possibly up on a reverse sweep, but this is the matchup where we said Druid gets to show why it was brought. We expected that Demon Hunters and the Zoo for Surrender would be able to get a win at some point. So it's really just a test now of whether Surrender's Rogue can stand up against Glory's Druid.
And, you know, to be fair, we've been calling it a bit of an underdog up against the Druid. It's not like it just dies to Glowfly Swarm when it comes down. There are other ways the matchups can play out, Gia.
Yeah, for example, if Rogue can, say, get the coin and land a very early big Edwin, that's kind of classically been the way that Rogue deals with a Druid before their threats can even come down. But Surrender is off coin here. That's a powerful start for Glory.
Oh, that is nuts. He just needs to get a couple of extra spells, I guess, before the Glowfly Swarm really reaches its ultimate potential. But even outside of that, being able to gain 3 mana crystals over the course of the mid-game, Ysera Unleashed could just come down right at the start.
And you say mid-game, we know that Rogue is already very different from how it was before, a bit slower in the mid-game. They don't really play threats until around turn 5. Everything else has just low attack, high health to try and survive onto the board by then. So I think Glory will definitely have the time.
The Blackjack Stunner kept in combination with Praise Galacrond at the start for Surrender. You can understand the reasoning. He clearly was indicating that he wanted to play it on 1 as a slightly weaker version of Pharaoh Cat, and then follow up with the Praise to hopefully get a high tempo start like this.
Yeah, and you see that he chooses to play the Praise before the Pharaoh Cat because he says, if I get Faceless Lackey, I want to play it and develop as much damage as possible. And he gets rewarded for it. Sort of, because Hegel maybe gets him an extra draw. Surrender was cheering, but Hegel did not deliver today.
Hegel's out of the office, gone fishing. But even so, Surrender has not floated a single mana in the early game, which nowadays is not necessarily something you can always expect as Rogue. Very powerful start.
Coming up with a wide board of his own. If somehow Rogue could steal the power of the wild from the Druid, that would actually be insane. Then his board could start trading against Glowflies.
Well, I think the main thing is that Surrender is 1 invoke card away from a fully invoked Galacrond on curve now.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
As well as his early development. This is insane.
Will it stand up to this Glowfly?
Whoa. Now Glory enters the game, an insanely powerful turn here, and Surrender is left with...
more draws.
Yeah, not the best response to the Glowflies.
He actually can... There's a lot of good results off of this Grand Mummy, depending on what it buffs after the Death Rattle lands. I actually think he trades off the 2/2 first. Yes, I like this a lot. So 3 out of 4 of these can get 2 attack and start trading well.
Yep, very good trading there at the start.
You can Seal Fate, another thing, try to get Kobold or Rush Lackey. Rush Lackey would be insane because he could then rush the Grandmummy again, try to buff something else.
Is that better, though, than upgrading your Miscreant to a 4-drop and making a 6/6 Edwin?
You're right, that sounds better.
Or even your Nat Pagel to a 3-drop. You know, that allows something else to attack. That might be better. But kind of the point is that you could sacrifice a little bit of removal for much stronger development.
I quite like that. I love it. Taking a leaf out of Flurry's book here.
I really like this. 3 minions on board is not the end of the world. If they have Savage Roar or the Power of the Wild, you're still in the lead here.
Mount Seller! It's active this turn if he wants. It's 1 mana short of being able to play something like Fungal as well, so maybe Glory just holds back, goes for another Glowfly turn.
Yes.
Really pops off next turn.
I like the Glowfly a lot on this turn.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this is one close game, Jia.
I love to see it. And then Surrender. Is there a way he can put Glory on a clock now? Just with the Edwin going face over 2 turns. He's pretty nuts.
That is the final invoke. So now for Surrender, I think the game plan shifts away, actually, from going for lethal counts to try and set up 2 or 3 turn lethal into just surviving until Galakron can fully invoke.
I love the order from Surrender. He plays the taunt first, and then he'll trade off this Draconic, and then the Grandmummy into the other 2/1. Gets the possibility of buffing his taunt. Oh, it would... This Edwin needs to go face, right? He's at 30, it's fine. You said the game plan shit. Oh my god, scrap him! Back again.
Yeah, a little bit less happy to see it this time. It's the guy who you love to see at the party at the start, but you know what? It's getting late. It's time to go home. Scrap him.
Surrender's debating so hard if he needs to trade or not. Let's look at the list from Glory. Savage Roar is a 2 of inclusion, as it always has been for the Japanese players, but surely can't be playing around exactly double Roar point power duel. I think that the Summit base is much more relevant. But here we go. Raven.
Pretty good outcomes.
No Griffins yet. He's got 2 more rolls. 2 more rolls.
Ironbark as well. I think it might just be a little bit too much for Surrender.
Kinda crazy.
Whoa!
Well, the game plan does now look like it needs to be survive until deathbane for Surrender, but can he even do that? Oh my goodness.
Unable to even get the Edwin face now, and another taunt, even if he was able to find some way of dealing with the King Muggler. Well, it might have to be Galakron's now, and pray that you get Kronks.
I'm looking at fully invoke it. He's not dead if he trades a few things, and he can seal fate the Grizzly, he can backstab the Mukla and trade it down.
Oh, it's not just next turn though, G, it's the turn after with the seal fate having to go on top as well.
It's really tough.
It's really tough, but I think he just has to play it.
He didn't have enough mana to play both of the invoke cards. Fog doesn't quite get there right now.
If he can survive the turn though, Togwaggle can draw him the Kronks and eviscerate whatever he needs to clear the board.
From what we can see, he can survive this turn. But Glory, without Savage Roar, can still draw into it, I believe. Oh my god! No! That's crazy! Okay, 16 showing right now. Savage Roar is another 14. 30, and Power of the Wild is another 5. That is lethal!
That's lethal.
What?
Yep, none of the secrets can stop it.
That's crazy! Are we Okay, Glory double checking, triple checking. But even if it's not lethal, it's the play. It does so much damage. But we can see that it is indeed lethal. Surrender hates to see it. Did everything he could to prevent it, but that is just, I guess, the reason for bringing Druid.
Such a brutally close game there right at the end. Surrender on the cusp of getting the reverse sweep against the Druid, but on their 4th encounter, after Surrender taking the previous 3 wins this season, finally, Glory, as you can see how much it means to him, takes the win, and for the moment at least, solidifies his reputation as the king of APAC. So, despite Surrender's 1st and 2nd place earlier on, Glory, with his own 1st and 2nd place, is clearly showing such a high degree of Hearthstone here.
Oh my gosh, what a back and forth series of Hearthstone. I really, really enjoyed that. I would say that overall, I quite liked everything that Surrender had gone for in terms of macro game plan and also just micro optimizations, where if I had to nitpick anything on Glory's end, it would be on those micro decisions at the end and maybe getting a little too carried away when he could have used a little bit of removal earlier or taken more time to think about things. But that's not to discount his achievements overall throughout the series, which is just very strong display of macro gameplay. And I think just the lineup as well. I still like bringing Druid if you expect that Rogue will be the weak link this week.
I think it's a great point you bring up there with Glory. It feels like his biggest strength and his weakness is his focusing on his own game plan, because when he's playing the Druid, it means he's not distracted by removing too many minions. Instead, he's focused on doing the most powerful things he can each turn. But then it works to his detriment when he's ignoring cards like the Glaive-bound Adept, which came down for exact lethal, the classic 1-card combo there from the Demon Hunter to just take the game. And I think overall, despite enraging Gia, it was a very well-played game by Glory with just a couple of minor optimizations that could be made, but still looking to be, I think, a front runner to get to the playoffs and then afterwards the global finals.
I could definitely see a world where that happens, but I am enraged, Eric. I have +2 attack or whatever you want to call it. Bloodsworn Mercenary going to come down. And that's why people ban Warrior, guys. And,
it is indeed.
Yeah.
But not this
Speaking
time,
of,
Gia.
yeah.
Our next match of the day, Kin versus Rivius. Take us through what we're